Next question from Melton Pristo. He's asking, please ask Lehman to explain smart contracts 2.0 like I'm 5. It sounds technical, but it sounds so promising.
Ah, yes. Smart contracts 2.0. So 1.0, we had at the very launch, very beginning, when we had our open access, we had a bunch of dApps deployed on our smart contracts. But they were using the EVMs that were available at the time. The EVM is the program that interprets your smart contract. They were not good. And it ended up, and boy, there've been peer-reviewed papers about attacks on them, and they're just not good in other ways. And we've even found bugs in it that were just horrendously bad. I can't believe they were there. What we are doing now then is and actually that was part of the motivation for building everything else, was that smart contracts weren't all that good. Although the other things we ended up building are really valuable. Even if you have the world's perfect smart contract, you would still want the consensus service. You would still want native tokens. These are actually extremely useful. But we also want to make smart contracts better. So what are we doing? 2 things. Three things. We're actually 3 things to make them better. First, we're switching EVMs. We're going to use the Bezu EVM that was developed for Hyperledger. I'm excited about that. It is faster. It is more secure. Our old one is actually deprecated. Nobody's actually adding to it anymore. But it was open source, but open source isn't any good if no one ever uses it. This new one is an active open source community that's actually adding to it. So we're excited about that. And if we make any changes to it, we'll contribute them back. But maybe it's good enough. We don't need to make changes. We'll see. Whatever. But any changes we make, we'll contribute back. So that's the Bezu EVM. We're going to a better EVM. That's a fundamentally big change. The second change is that we are building basically a database from scratch. It's like a key value store database, like a NoSQL database from scratch. And the idea is that it stores the information on the hard drive, not in RAM. It, of course, has to have some indices in RAM. You have to keep an index in RAM, but it also is going to keep an index on the hard drive itself. And it ends up storing a Merkle tree. But it's not really a Merkle tree. It's actually a virtual Merkle tree where you are using key value pairs to virtually represent it. It's not literally pointers. It's more key value pairs telling you who your children are. If you're a computer scientist, that all sounds maybe interesting. If you're not a computer scientist, your eyes just glazed over. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about all that. It's just cool. The bottom line is that it allows us to do things really fast and to have more stuff than would fit in RAM. That's important. So the states of all the smart contracts can be bigger than would fit in the memory of the computer. It just has to fit on the hard drive of the computer. Well, it plus a backup or 2 have to be able to fit on the hard drive. So it allows us to have bigger states. And then we're doing enormous effort to make sure that our reconnect will continue to work, and that our boot up process will continue to be fast enough, and that it doesn't introduce any bugs. So we had this whole system for how we're storing the data, and it's very cool. We have some great engineers working on it, and they've had to come up with new algorithms for things in order to make it work. And you'll all see that it'll be released open source, and you'll get to look at it. It's just fun. And then the third thing is that now that we're going to have a nice, fast smart contract, we're going to add some more features to it, which will allow it to interoperate with our native tokens. And so what you'll be able to do is, in Solidity, you think you're calling a precompiled function, a precompiled contract. But really what you're doing is you're calling some code that we have that lets you talk to our native tokens. And so you will be able to see how many native tokens are in an account. Or if you own the account, your smart contract will be able to move them to someday. Or your smart contract will be able to itself own some tokens. And the smart contract will be able to give them to people under certain circumstances with very complicated rules for when it gets given. You could build a DEX inside of a smart contract. You could do all sorts of things. And over time, we will be adding more and more features. So for example, as the HIP process shows us what kinds of things you want to be doing, like we talked about the HIP for DEXs, and as we hear what kinds of things you want to be doing, we'll be adding more tools to the smart contracts to allow them to be useful for doing those sorts of things. And so that's smart contracts 2.0. Faster EVM, a better storage system that can actually use the hard drive but still be very fast, and interoperability with our native stuff, our native tokens, and eventually all of our native transactions. That's the roadmap we're on, and we're calling it Smart Contracts 2.0.
Awesome. And next question is from Alex, who is asking, that's regarding the council. When can we know who that Fortune 10 company is?
So we always have this pipeline for the council, and we never know whether someone's going to join or not until we announce it. And so who knows what the future will hold? When you listen to our future announcements, you'll find out what we're announcing. And it isn't, we've always done this, and I know it's frustrating. Oh, we're keeping it secret who we're talking to. And part of it is that these companies really do want it to be kept secret until it's final. But also, you guys hear rumors long before it's final. And, half the things you hear rumors about are not, never end up happening. And I keep hearing rumors from the community that this will never happen. So we have this mixture of rumors that aren't even true, rumors of things that are in progress, but in progress doesn't mean they'll come to fruition. And then we have things that we've already signed the contract, it's definitely going to come to fruition, but we just have to get the timing right for when to announce it. And council members don't want us to announce, or people who build on top of us, don't want us to announce it before a certain date, and we don't. So we have to be careful about all that. And all I can say, I don't know for any particular company whether they're going to join us or not. Until you see their name on the dotted line, you never know. All I can say is that our pipeline, our funnel is really impressive. And I am just delighted by all the companies we have in the pipeline right now. The most recent one we announced was IIT. That was in the works for a long time. I really wanted to announce it early and tell you we were working on it. I was really crossing my fingers and hoping that IIT would join. And I'm just delighted that we were able to say it. So the other ones are in the same boat.
Yeah, but there's already an impressive list of companies, like you said earlier, Google, IBM, Deutsche Telekom, all these giant companies, Boeing. So yeah, I think from here on, it's also more appealing for other big companies to join that, to see like who else is already on board. I think that makes sense. Next question, I think we can do two more if your time is allowing it.
Sure.
Let's choose the one from Dylan. Dylan is asking, when proxy staking is released, will there be a certain amount of HBAR that can be proxy staked to one node? For example, if I have thousands of people trying to proxy stake on a node, will some people get left out with that opportunity, or will it be limitless?
Neither. It is not some people would get left out, nor is it limitless per node. So what you want for security is you want everyone to be able to proxy stake. You don't want any limits on that. But you don't want them to all send to the same node, because then that one node has the power to destroy the network. You don't want one node to have a third of the stake, because then it has great power. It really is. In the math, you can never have a system that's better than that in certain senses if the attacker can control the internet in certain ways. So what we would do is we would have a cap on how much you can do per node. And so if one node is full, you just have to stake to somebody else. But we would put the caps such that everyone in the world could be staking to somebody. We would just try to ensure that it's smoothed out somewhat, and that you don't have one node that is the whale that controls everything. And so probably what we would end up with is a limit per node. I think that makes sense. But we would put the limits designed such that everybody who wants to stake can stake. That would be the goal.
Awesome. And then Cryptomancer is asking, is it possible to make a decentralized relay via Hedera consensus service for cross-chain DEX for all blockchains, not just for ETH, which is what you talked about earlier with Alliance Block, right?
So this is a great question. Can you use the consensus service to build bridges between everything? The answer is yes. So what you need to do to build a bridge between most modern day ledgers that don't have state proofs, what you generally need to do is have a group of validators for your bridge. And then the validators for your bridge have to come to consensus on whether or not they agree on something. That's often how it works. If you do it on a private network, but you let Hedera be doing the consensus for the private network, it actually helps you. It helps with your communication. It helps you with your security. It helps you ensure that you're not shut down. It helps you ensure certain types of bad behavior can't happen. And everybody can come to a consensus on what our consensus is. You can know for sure that there was a consensus from the group. All of these things can be done more easily if you're using the consensus service on AppNet. And so, yeah, I think AppNet's bridges are a great application of AppNets. And you can do it without AppNets. There are other ways of doing bridges with Hedera, but I think AppNets are a great way to do consensus bridges. is using our consensus service.
Awesome. And then last question from Boy. He's asking, do you ever track or follow the HBAR price?
The HBAR price does not matter. I should not watch it. I have to admit, people watch baseball game scores, and I would watch it too. But it really isn't important. What's important is whether we're building a utility that will be used for 100 years. Are we building a system that will last for 100 years? But it is also, it's always exciting to see it go up. But it's not important. What's important is that we are building something of real value. And if you build something of real value, then valuations will come along. And that's really what you want. You don't want bubbles. What you want is real value driving valuations. And all of you guys building on top of us are what drives the real value. And I just want to give a thank you to this community, because the true purpose of a ledger is to be used. And the apps that you build on top of our foundation are the value. That is where the value of HBAR comes from. We have a pretty good foundation, but a foundation by itself is completely useless. It is only because of the things that you are building on it. I want to give you a thank you for that, all of you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end this session. And thank you also for going a bit over the hour mark. Somebody, I find this funny, right before we started this call, somebody commented, it's like meeting with Bill Gates before he was famous, except he's going to one day be as famous. So let's see how this ages. But I'm really excited, and also thank you for everything you've done and contributed and helped innovate in this space. I think we're onto something big, like you said in the very beginning. Thanks also for just taking the time to come on here and speak with me for over an hour. I really, really appreciate that. And we'll keep track of everything and hopefully do this one time soon in the future.
Okay, and thank you for what you do and the work you do in educating people and spreading word. And thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, man.